Hello, and welcome to our Advanced Authentication overview and demonstration. My name is Richard Cabana, and I'm a Senior Systems Engineer at Micro Focus on the Security Risk and Governance team. It is my pleasure to introduce Rob Rawson, who is the Chief Identity and Access Officer for CIS Systems and who will be co-hosting this presentation. Our agenda for today is a high-level overview of the solution itself, followed by some CIS real-world implementations. We'll discuss differentiators between us and other solutions out there. We'll also cover a couple of use cases demonstrating the enrollment of a smartphone. We'll show that smartphone being used for two-factor authentication for a Windows desktop. And we will also provide a demonstration of VPN authentication using a smartphone for two-factor with it as well. Advanced Authentication, or Adaptive Authentication as the product will be rebranded in order to better reflect its strengths, is a framework for providing authentication to many disparate systems. We include many integration points right out of the box for both common and specialized access. We support Macintosh, Windows, and Linux desktops, regardless of whether or not they are joined to a domain. We also support SAML OAuth 2 out of the box. So if, for example, your company uses Salesforce.com or other applications that depend on this, users can easily connect and authenticate. We are Citrix ready, having completed their certification processes, and we provide full ADFS support from Microsoft and even provide two-factor authentication to the mainframe with a ZOS connector. We have a REST API and a connector for Radius providing connections to network applications such as a VPN client. This slide shows a broad spectrum of the methods we support, additional features we can integrate with, and our various client capabilities. We're also showing the available risk services in purple on the far right, which are available since version 6.3. On the left in orange, you can see the methods we support out of the box, such as smartphones, or Google Auth, or soft tokens, or a variety of other different methods. One of the security features we can exploit using a smartphone is geofencing. We've integrated with Google Maps, so you're able to locate your office by its address, draw a perimeter around it, and then if users are inside the building, they can use the phone to authenticate. If, however, they're outside of the building, their access to applications protected by this feature would be denied. We also support Bluetooth. We can chain together a smartphone and a laptop using Bluetooth, sending a push notification to the phone. Once accepted, you could use Bluetooth to authenticate to the laptop when it's within proximity. A good use case for this would be somebody, for instance, in a medical profession or some other profession where they require two-factor authentication. During their normal working hours, they would authenticate with two-factor when they first log in, and then for the period of time they're scheduled for work, they can just use proximity access to re-authenticate. There are many other methods you could use, such as FIDO2, OTP. One of the methods I'd like to point out for you is the bank ID method. This is an example of one that we've built for a customer who had a particular requirement within the financial community. We built this connector for them in a couple of weeks' time, and given that it could be used for other people, we've included it out of the box with many other features. In the features section, you can see we run on Docker and use Kubernetes. We support Kerberos and auto-enrollment. Another interesting feature worth exploring is the account linking. How this can be used is in a help desk scenario when a user is not in the office and a help desk person wants to resolve an issue. They could RDP to that client, its desktop, and when the login prompt comes up, select to log in as the user but provide a one-time password or push notification. Once they've done this, they've logged in as the user's persona and they can proceed with resolving the issue. This is, of course, completely audited and documented for tracking and governance. The UI itself is customizable and fully localized, and we support offline cached login, enabling two-factor authentication when you're not on the network. We also support NIST biometrics, VDI, and VMware, as well as Citrix. Risk services provide another level of elevated security by having determinant factors such as IP addresses or historical use patterns or login times trigger an elevated chain of authentication. We will now take a moment to bring you towards our demo on user enrollment and Windows login. Okay, so for the following, how we can take a BYOB device such as a smartphone or a corporate phone for that matter and provide two-factor authentication by easily enrolling it so that you could have a more secure login to your Windows desktop. So first I'll shrink out the presentation here and I will bring up my demonstration screen. And at first what we're going to do is we're going to log in as a standard user. And I should be prompted for an LDAP password. And this is just a standard Windows 10 desktop. Once we've successfully logged in, I'll open up the portal and we'll show the enrollment process for a standard Windows 10 device. So I'll go ahead and open my browser here. While I'm doing this, I'll just take a moment to mention that we've also demonstrated this by providing an email to a customer. And in that email, there'd be a URL link that you set up that can also enable you to provide a logon via a small mini web portal. So let's go in here and just do an advanced authentication enrollment. So I'll go in as my user ID and provide my LDAP password. And as you can see, for the moment, I only have one LDAP authentication, or just have LDAP authentication, but I have many other methods that are available to me that I can use for two-factor authentication. In this case, I'm going to choose a smartphone, and I'll provide a password, or sorry, a comment saying that it's a BYOB device. Code for me to scan, so I'll open up my, I should bring this over for you, so let me bring over my smartphone here. And I'm going to go into the NetIQ Authenticator. And I'm going to add that barcode. Once I've done this, my most complicated part really is just to go ahead and provide it with a description. Once I've done that and saved it, I now have that method available to myself. So let's go ahead and sign out. I'm going to sign back in as the same user. And you can see now that it's asking for two-factor authentication as opposed to just my LDAP password. So I'm going to go ahead and open up NetIQ Authenticator. And one thing I'd like to point out here is it wants to have my fingerprint ID before it'll let me get to the two-factor authentication on NetIQ Authenticator app. This is an additional level of protection. So if somebody for some reason had compromised your phone or rather compromised your local password, the phone itself is protected before you can get to the two-factor authentication, enabling you to prevent somebody from having both of those methods available, the LDAP and the smartphone. So it should just take a moment now that we've got this unlocked. And once the communication's gone back and forth, I should be prompted for acceptance of two-factor authentication. try. So, not sure why, but we'll wait for that to come in. There it goes. So we now have the ability to accept the smartphone authentication. Once we've accepted that, we go ahead and put in our LDAP password. And now we're authenticated to that desktop. So we saw that prior to the smartphone enrollment, I just had a standard LDAP password. In this case here, it now asks us for the two-factor authentication. And I could go ahead at any time if I wanted to and test the authentication to make sure that everything was working fine. I'm also going to take a moment here to show you the administration screen. So first let's get this up. And if I went in again just as a standard user and showed my two methods here, once I've gone ahead and logged in. By the way, I can also protect this with a chain, so I could have had either Bluetooth or again my two-factor authentication to protect getting into the enrollment desk, but I just went ahead and kept it as LDAP for the moment. But once I go here, you can see I've got that smartphone authenticator that we had just enrolled. I could go ahead and send a test here, and I'll see that right away I've got this. I can decline it or accept it. The response will come back rather quickly. So I can see that I decline that. I'll send the test again. This time I'll accept. So I'll go ahead and accept that, and you'll see that the Advanced Authentication Administration portal. And this time I'm going to log in as the administrator. Sorry. I'm already enrolled as an administrator. I just have to get into the right interface here. Put in my password. And just briefly, you can see I've got a dashboard that shows me what's going on with the software itself, with the application. I can also show you that I've got all of these different methods that I can use for the enrollment of users. And we function with the ability to provide chains, which means I can have more than one of these methods connected together to allow me to have additional protection. I talked about in the presentation component the ability, for instance, to chain Bluetooth along with a smartphone to provide proximity authentication. One of the things that's really handy with this administration software as well is it has in the moment help context or contextual help. So if I click here on creating a chain, it goes ahead and shows me when I click the help menu that I have access right away to the different instructions and how to do the chaining. Let's go to the top of that admin screen for a moment, and what I'd like to show you is I could go in here and have help for integrations. So I'll click and open this, and you can see I've got sample integration documentation as well, and I can go down here and you can see I've got all these different type of authentication examples. This product. In our previous demonstration, I showed you how you can quickly and easily enroll a smartphone, whether it be a BYOB device or a corporate device, to provide two-factor authentication to a Windows 10 desktop. I'd now like to take a moment to show you two-factor authentication for VPN clients as well. In our company, we provide our users with two different VPN clients, either Secure Pulse or Cisco AnyConnect. I happen to be a Cisco AnyConnect client, so I'm going to go ahead and show you that enrollment, or rather that logon. So I'll shrink this down and I will open up my VPN. We'll go ahead and do a connection. So you can see that in this case it asks first for my LDAP password, which is opposite from what you saw with the Windows client. So I'll go ahead and provide the LDAP credentials. And you can see that on the smartphone I get a notification that I require authentication. Once again here, the phone itself is protected by the fingerprint ID, so I can't get to those methods until I've provided that. And this again gives you an additional level moments, and you'll see that I already have Corp DOM on the bottom that's enrolled as one of the smart phone methods, but I also have the VPN client, which should wake up in a moment and ask us for additional authentication here. Sometimes it just takes a couple of moments. As I said, within our company, we use either Secure Pulse or we use the Cisco VPN Connect. For some reason here it timed me out, so let's go ahead and put in that password again. But we work with many other VPN clients as well. So I'll go ahead and add that second time. And you can see that it asks us to accept the authentication request. I go ahead and do that, and once that gets sent back to the corporate domain, you'll see that I have the complete process for my VPN authentication. At this point, I'm fully authenticated using two-factor authentication, and I can go ahead and access applications we previously talked about, such as Salesforce or others which are protected with the two-factor authentication. So what you just saw was using the same smartphone for two-factor authentication on a VPN network. Thank you. In our preceding demonstration, I showed you how you can use two-factor authentication to augment your VPN access. In my particular case, I showed you accessing the Cisco VPN client using two-factor authentication with a Windows smartphone as the second method. If you're a current user of other Micro Focus technologies or plan on purchasing any of the solutions that you can see on this slide, you can immediately leverage adaptive authentication for your security. Whether you're doing an application development project with StarTeam, or if you have identity governance or identity and access management, or perhaps you're a privileged account manager user, we can provide that two-factor authentication, reducing your risk with simple integration. I'd like to now take a moment to have Rob come back up and discuss some of the advanced use cases that CIS has been involved with.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, I'm Rob Rawson, and I run the Security Information Event Management and Identity Access Management practice at CIS, known, with apologies to Dr. Seuss, as the CMIAM practice. I'd like to tell you a bit about a couple of more advanced use cases that we've engineered for our clients using adaptive authentication. Today we're going to discuss two of our clients, a financial company dealing with a sudden need for regulatory compliance and how we made both security and marketing happy there, and a media services upon my client was called NYCRR 500, which mandated more than a dozen requirements for any financial public-facing web services which might potentially expose personally identifying information. The mandate they had not addressed was two-factor authentication. The aspect they needed help with were a pair of differently architected portals. One had implemented SSO via NetIQ Access Manager, the other through ADFS. They used LDAP directories for authentication, but mobile numbers were stored in a separate SQL database. But beyond those technical challenges, the marketing department stepped in. The regulations stated that the level of security needed to be commensurate with the risk of exposure that each logged-in user would pose. For an individual, for example, it was their accounts. But for an agent who might work with dozens of individuals, they should have higher security. We proposed that individuals would need to log in with a second factor twice a year from each device, but that agents would need to use the second factor each time. Then marketing stepped in and said it was too challenging, it would cause competitive issues, and that the company's legal department had approved having both sorts of clients challenged once per year per device. And of course, marketing being marketing, they also wanted to make clear that all the pages should be styled to look exactly consistent with the existing portals so that new functionality would slip in with minimal user disruption. The solution is shown on these two pages. This is their customer portal. The user is logged in for the first time on this particular device after two-factor authentication was deployed. Using the email address or mobile number that was already on file, they are prompted to choose which one they want to use to validate their login. The next time they log in, they won't see this, at least not for a year. And a number of other components in the environment with Duo. Other components, however, were using other methods of 2FA, and they wanted to consolidate on one solution for the entire organization. We integrated adaptive authentication with their existing Duo account, which was already integrated into their Active Directory domain. The result was once self-service password was integrated with AA, their end users were all pre-enrolled in Duo and could reset their passwords easily, and the help desk admins from their partner companies who also use this product to support their end users could securely access SSPR from over the web. We recorded a quick demo of how this solution looks to the end user. In this demo, we will show how CIS used Advanced Authentication to help a customer extend their existing Duo implementation to more systems. This is my personal laptop. I run OpenSUSE Linux, so this VPN client is built in. When I connect to the client's VPN, they had already set it up to send me a possession factor challenge via Duo. Here I am entering my credentials and will be challenged to respond to the Duo app on my phone. You might have noticed that the client's name has been obscured, respecting their privacy and security. Now we'd like to show you the value CIS added to the existing MFA solution using adaptive authentication. First, we are browsing to the existing SSPR portal and I'm entering my email address as a username. Next, I'm choosing which second factor to use, the built-in email factor or our integration of Duo. Next, we're entering our password, and after that we're going to be challenged by Duo. Duo presents its pop-up authentication via push notification. We answer the challenge that we're in possession of our device and we're authenticated. What we've enabled here is leveraging the already in existence Duo enrollment and extended it to a new application.
In the previous section, Rob showed you how the professional service team at CIS was able to help their customers set up and implement adaptive authentication for their customers using highly relevant use cases. I'd like to now touch on a couple of differentiators between our solution and its competitors, then finish up with an offer as Micro Focus's way to provide assistance in the current climate. So just how are we different from our competitors? Well, first and foremost, as you saw in one of my earlier slides, we have tokens through smartphones, Bluetooth, through things such as the bank ID or many other methods that are provided out of the box. Currently, we're an on-prem solution, but as of October 2020, we will also be providing software as a service so that you can use the solution as a tenant in the cloud. We're licensed per user for as many methods as you want. So again, because it's user-based licensing, all of those different methods don't impact your costs whatsoever. We also can allow you to install as many servers as you like, because that user licensing means that you can provide fault tolerance by having additional servers, and again, it won't cost you anything more than the hardware or virtual machine. As new technologies develop, we'll be able to adapt along with you. I'd like to now talk to you a little bit about one of the things that Micro Focus is doing for its part to help ourselves and yourselves in the time of the COVID crisis. Early on, as the COVID-19 pandemic started forcing companies to rethink how to run their businesses, we provided a number of solutions for enhancing remote access at no cost. It was our way to assist the community in these rather special times. One of the offerings was an unlimited license for Advanced Authentication, which was due to expire July 31st, 2020. It's my pleasure to in the same boat and situation as yourselves, and we can empathize that anything we can do to make the transition in this new workplace a little easier is to all of our benefits. Thank you very much.